When did trying to have peace and stop bloodshed?
Sure, I'll bite, and I'll address this guy first. One of many reasons I stay anonymous on this app is directly related to your question. I'm an immigrant. I come from a country that American conservatives have never been friendly to. That country has a predominant religion that American conservatives have never been friendly to. During my time in the United States, my religious views have changed to views that American conservatives have never been friendly to. I'm a veteran with over a decade of active service in a combat role, to include deployment to Afghanistan. I work in an extremely conservative industry, both before my military service and after. And I've went to schools growing up and lived in communities that are also dominated by conservative people. Thanks to the regular conservative desire, as evidenced by policy positions and personal actions, I have never known peace at the hands of conservatives. Not institutionally, not on a personal level. The words that have been used against me at work, by customers, by my own coworkers and bosses, same thing at school growing up, have been backed by fists and fighting and attacks, simply because of where I come from. And I know I don't have it the worst. I have a lot of peers who have experienced a lot worse. We have lived lifetimes never knowing peace from conservative ideology. The country I come from has a very similar political environment to what's going on right now. That country and its people don't know any peace either, thanks to a very similar ideology. And I'm not talking about the specific policies, I'm talking about the mentality of conservatism to begin with. And then additionally, I am talking about the influence of adversary nations on both the United States and the nation that I immigrated here from. Now, you claim that you desire peace, and I'm not going to say where you get your beliefs from. I'll go ahead and accept that, okay? Through thousands of interactions with people of conservative ideology, and I'm not talking specific policies, right? Just the kind of mentality that leads to this political environment, which can happen around the world and then is applied to the nationality or the preferences of a culture, okay? We know for sure that peace is not the objective behind this. We know it. We know it from our own experiences going to Iraq and Afghanistan, and later on Syria, when American progressives or non-conservatives in general, and even some conservatives were like, hey, we shouldn't be there. We don't need to be in that country. Who resisted that the most? And I am not talking about the Afghanistan drawdown, because I can cover that in a second. American conservatives resisted that the most. American conservatives are the ones attacking people who are anti-war and projecting that idea that they were anti-military and hated veterans. We all know, truly know, who votes against care for veterans after they complete their service. To cover the Afghanistan drawdown, which was commanded by Trump and followed through by Biden, right? That was a betrayal of all of our allies that we developed in Afghanistan, right? Afghan National Army got overran after fighting pretty hard, despite, the attrition they faced by people ultimately deserting. We betrayed our own interpreters over there. This was at Trump's command. He does not care about peace. Allowing the Russians, who invaded Ukraine in the first place, to maintain what they have now means there is no peace for Ukrainians in the new territory that they would have. There's already no peace for Ukrainians. They bomb hospitals, they steal Ukrainian children and send them to Russia, changing their identities and making it harder for them to ever find their families again, even if there is a path to do so. This is an open endorsement to Russia to continue trying its expansion, which is part of its geopolitical goals for decades now. They've even written like a manifesto, if you will, on what they need to do and how to do it. And so far, they've successfully implemented that in many ways around the world and in the United States. Handing over that territory to Russia officially is an authorization of their invasion. It is saying, hey, America supports you enacting violence on the rest of the world. And yes, the United States has its own issues with that. But we can talk about things, on a case-by-case basis. American progressives have always opposed United States imperialism. But we also recognize when there are consequences to our actions, we have a responsibility to make it right. And that is something that conservatives do not share an opinion about. They do not feel accountability. They do not feel responsibility for doing right by the destruction that is caused by their policy. The strength of a nation is not just what it does with its internal policy. It's how it interfaces with the rest of the world. And the current Republican government has decided its interface with the rest of the world will be brute force and dominance and enabling countries who have the same mentality. That's the problem. It's going to lead to more war, because what's going to happen is all these nations with expansionist ambition, to include now us with this whole Greenland and Panama and Canada thing, right? They're going to act on that, and there will be no resistance from the United States where there would have been before. And we know this for sure. So there will be more war as a consequence of allowing Russia to take what they have fought for. Okay? To take land from Ukraine, to violate that sovereignty, to take those resources. Okay? We're already seeing resource battles around the world. For example, Azerbaijan and Armenia with water. And if you refuse to interpret current events that way, there are plenty of examples in history where a powerful nation turns to this ideology that we have now taking over the United States federal government and many of its states' governments. It always leads to more conflict. It always leads to more war. It always leads to more people dying. So we do not believe that you are in the interest of peace, nor do we believe that the politicians you vote for are in the interest of peace. Because while it might feel good to say that, and while you might suggest that your actions are peaceful, there is a lot of violence committed by this ideology on an international scale, domestic, and even on a personal level. If you made it this far, thanks, I guess. Before I close this out, I just want to reiterate, a lot of us are coming from a personal life perspective from our lives outside the United States and our lives here, and how conservative ideology, again, independent of the specific policies and nations, but more so this attitude of, feigned isolationism and, trying to eject people from your borders and trying to stop certain data from being collected and getting out. That's a universal kind of thing that always, always, always is part of an ideology that causes violence around the world and within our own borders. And not reactionary violence like you might see at a protest, but deliberate attacks. And we see this happening again, and we are scared. And we're also really, really disappointed because you're going to feel isolation from those effects and are going to be supporting those things until it's way too late. And eventually when they come down to your door, like we saw with COVID coming to invading people's bodies, you're going to be denying it till the very, very end of your life. And I don't wish that upon you. I don't care if you might support this government. I don't wish that upon you. And I really wish that mentality was reciprocated, but it's not. And that's why we do not believe you come from a place of peace, nor do your peers who voted for this government, nor does this government.